and welcome to the hashtag Make Procurement Awesome with SAP Ariba podcast series. Please welcome Craig Bailey, Senior Director at the Hackett Group, who's here to talk about their annual working capital survey and all things Days Inventory Outstanding, that is DIO. Welcome, Craig. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Derrick. Good to talk to you.
For full disclosure, I used to work with Craig at the Hackett Group. He brings a wealth of subject matter expertise and knowledge to the table. He also brings a British accent, which has helped him out tremendously here in the U.S., where he mostly works now, because regardless of what he says, it sounds intelligent to us Americans. I don't know if you're aware of that, Craig, but big plus for you.
Thank you, Derrick.
Before we get into the details of the survey, could you help our listeners understand what Days Inventory Outstanding DIO, what that is and why it's important?
Sure, happy to, Derrick. Well, DIO is a different way of looking at inventory. If we measure just inventory value in isolation, it can be pretty misleading because inventory values can rise and can fall as sales go up and go down. So purely looking at how that value is trending is not always a good indicator of business performance. Now, by looking at DIO, what we're doing is we are linking inventory directly to sales, so we can get a much better idea of how much inventory is the business holding according to their needs. Now, looking at DIO, in the latest Hackett Group Working Capital Survey, we saw that DIO has continued to increase across the top 1,000 organizations in the US. But since the financial crisis, we're seeing that we're now at the highest level of DIO in 10 years, which is currently almost 51 days. A decade of low interest rates, we're seeing has really taken that pressure off working capital. And when you look at the current working capital metrics, you see that there is some improvement on DPO, days payables outstanding, and DSO, days sales outstanding, but DIO, our headline inventory metric, is still continuing to increase.
Do you guys have any insights on where that deterioration comes from?
Well, Derrick, what we're seeing is suddenly there is an increased focus now on working capital. But when we look at how organizations are tackling working capital, we're seeing that they're really going after the payables and the receivables opportunities first. Primarily those payables opportunities, where they're pushing their working capital burden onto their supply base. Because of that, because of terms being extended, we're then seeing some organizations are reacting, focusing on their DSO measurements by improving collections, particularly on those delinquent accounts. Now, DIO, we're not seeing such a significant focus yet, primarily because we believe that DIO is really the hardest metric to influence for an organization. As I said, DPO, you're really pushing that working capital burden outside of your organization, whereas on DIO, then you're releasing cash from your own operations, which requires process redesign, process improvement. The other key thing to bear in mind is any focus on DPO or DSO in our payables and receivables is something that can be driven through the finance organization. Whereas if a business really wants to focus on their inventory, they're going to need to get cross-functional alignment and buy-in before they can launch any improvement initiatives. Now, we are seeing some industries are showing some improvements. So whereas we're seeing significant deterioration in consumer packaged goods and food manufacturing, we're also seeing other industries being impacted by the falling oil price. We do see that there are improvements primarily in retail, where companies are starting to really look at how they can optimize their inventory levels.
How does that relate to procurement, finance, and supply chain?
Well, as I said, to focus on inventory optimization, you have to get the buy-in of all of those functions. But the key thing to think about is it's not just about cash. What we also do see is that any inventory improvement initiatives are going to help these functions, are going to help procurement, finance, and supply chain by not only liberating cash from operations, but also streamlining the business, improving supplier relationships. With any improvements in planning and communication of needs, then we can give a much better signal to our supplier base. We can also maximize customer service levels and improve customer satisfaction by rebalancing inventory levels to make sure that we have the investment in the right inventories that we need. And finally, also, organizations can liberate cash for internal improvement initiatives and opportunities, which can certainly benefit those functions of procurement, finance, and supply chain.
Do the survey results have any indication of what this cash flow opportunity is out there in the market so our listeners can get some context?
Well, the total inventory opportunity we're seeing out there in the US is $412 billion if organizations were able to move their DIO in line with that upper quartile performance.
So a tremendous opportunity there.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of cash out there still to be achieved.
Great. Okay. So if I could summarize real quickly, DIO is days inventory outstanding. It's a measure of your operational performance and potentially working capital opportunity. There's roughly 412 billion of that sitting out there in the market waiting to be liberated, as you say. And so lower DIO better increases your cash flow. Is that a good summary, as well as, all the other things you mentioned, such as improved service levels, customer service, streamlining the business, etc.?
Well, that's exactly it, Derrick. Lower DIO, optimized inventories is improved cash flow. And what's important about that is that gives the opportunity to spend that cash on other initiatives. And certainly in the survey, what we've seen is a continuing reliance on cheap debt. However, as everybody is expecting interest rates to rise, there is some focus now where organizations are looking at those quick wins and those easier opportunities on working capital, but still a lot more cash to be liberated there from the supply chain. As we said, over $400 billion, which can be used not only for all of those incremental improvements, but also to finance other internal initiatives and improvement opportunities.
So what can folks in procurement, finance, and supply chain actually do to improve their DIO? I know we've set the stage. You've given a great explanation of what it is and its impact on the organization and how it relates to these different functions. But do you have any specific recommendation how organizations can liberate that cash and realize those benefits?
Well, Derrick, it's a great question. One our clients ask us often.
I'm sure you tell them to use SAP Ariba solutions, right? That's your first and foremost answer.
Of course we do. Of course we do. But also we look at quick wins that businesses can take. Now, if we look at those functions you mentioned, procurement, finance, and supply chain, they all have different influences on DIO and inventory levels. And every organization is going to be different. But the key areas of opportunity, particularly around quick wins, often lie in, first of all, looking at how are we ordering, where are we ordering from, can we optimize those replenishment quantities and those replenishment frequencies, order less inventory more often, keep that average inventory low. Improving demand planning, reducing that forecast error is another area that businesses can look at. Also then looking at buffer stock, identifying why we have excess inventory in the supply chain. These are all key areas of focus. The one thing that we do see at the moment across many organizations is the supply chains are becoming increasingly more complex over time. That's not only through product proliferation, but also through mergers, acquisitions, and just organic growth of the business. And what this means is it can be difficult to, first of all, find out what is the source of excess inventory that we're seeing in the business. So I'd say, Derrick, really the key thing, the first thing to do is to isolate those headline metrics, look at those metrics, and we would include there not only DIO, but also slow-moving inventories, forecast accuracies, excess inventory above target levels, and service level achievement. And from that, identify where are we failing on the key metrics, and what are the key opportunities that we can go after so that a business can focus on a very narrow topic to first of all achieve those quick wins in inventory optimization.
All fantastic points, Craig. And if I could, I just want to add one additional component to that. So, firm believer in all the recommendations you gave, but one additional one is that technology component. I think it definitely plays a real role in improving days inventory outstanding. SAP Ariba solutions help you digitize a lot of those processes Craig was referring to. So our supply chain collaboration tool or solution actually uses the Ariba network to help improve collaboration between external business partners. And this actually results in a 12% lower days in inventory outstanding. So tremendous opportunity there as well, and something else to consider as folks are reimagining how they can improve their supply chain and DIO. Well, that concludes our podcast session on days inventory outstanding, working capital, and the Hackett Group's annual working capital survey. For access to the full Hackett Group report, please visit thehackettgroup.com under Insights. This is actually one of 3 installments discussing this important topic with the Hackett Group. And for more detailed information on the cash conversion cycle and days payable outstanding, the other 2 elements there, please refer to our iTunes page. Thank you again, Craig, for sharing your knowledge with us.
Great. Thanks, Derrick. Pleasure talking to you.